Let's go to our first guest of the morning, and waiting patiently on the line, Ian Willis from Wilson's agency at Woy Woy. Rod, over to you.
Now, Ian, from what I gathered, the market down your way still hot, and particularly hot. We're looking at rather older little cottages. There was an auction we did 2 weeks ago. It featured in the Express, the editorial about it. But not a bad thing when you walk and you can't even get in the home because of the number of people literally queuing up in order to register.
Yeah, thanks, Rod. It was a really good result. As you said, we took the property to auction and we had 13 registered bidders, and it was only a small home. And I remember you trying to get through to see me, to say hello and let me know that you were there, and it was a bit difficult. There was a pretty good lineup of buyers there.
Now, the one thing with the home, it was, I think, mid-1960s. It was pretty much completely original, but just immaculate. You've known the elderly lady there that decided it was time to sell. The neighbours on either side had done it. The home was just stunning. It had a big old mango tree in the backyard, frangipanis, but the important thing was it had R2 zoning. Was that influential, do you think, for the number of bidders that were on site? R1 medium density zoning.
R1, yeah, that's right. Look, the thing about it was it sort of fit three criteria. It was, as you said, R1, so you could potentially do a development there of a couple of units. The land was big enough to do a granny flat if someone wanted to keep the house and do that. And also being in such a good position, so close to the shops and station, it could actually just be an owner-occupier who ended up buying the property. So it sort of fit three main criteria there, and that's why I think there were so many buyers.
Looking at Piper Street there, though, Ian, I think it tells the story of the peninsula as a whole. People are looking for flat blocks, decent blocks of land, but they're also with the capacity of putting granny flats out the back. I think every second person through my office is looking to get into that sort of area down on the peninsula, and my advice to them is that they're probably a year or two too late.
Yeah, that's the way it's gone. As you said, it's like every second house has got one of those at the moment. And we looked at our statistics in the office of our last 50 sales, and 24 out of the 50 were to investors. So you're basically right on 50% of people investing in property. So to have the option to be able to get the dual income and value add to a property, because you look at the returns that those granny flats get, and they're such a good return, some of them up to $400 per week. It's kind of a no-brainer if you can do it.
And Ian, I'm seeing a lot of people locally want to peg their hat, if you like, down on the peninsula. They want to make their mark there, and they're buying rental properties down there with the view to, in the future, 5 to 10 years, basically moving down there themselves, perhaps building their dream home or extending or what have you. But there seems to be quite a shift down to the peninsula.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The amazing thing is you'd be surprised whenever I meet a buyer, if it's at an open home or a private inspection, and I'll just ask them, are you looking at something to move into or investment? And the amount of people that just say, I'm not actually sure. I say, well, what do you mean by that? And they'll say, well, we just want to get into the market, and if it's the right home, we'll move into it now. But if we just see a good opportunity, we'll buy it now and we will rent it out for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, and then we'll look to move here later on. So people just, as you said, trying to get a foothold in the market and then kind of working out what they're going to do later on.
Yeah, exactly right. They're putting their money where their mouth is. And I'm working and doing the sums in my head, but some of these people are going to be sitting on homes worth well over $1 million by the time they knock down and rebuild.
That's right, yeah. So to people ask about trying to be able to get something to knock down and rebuild on the area now, it's pretty hard in general to get anything under about the $500,000 mark. They still do come up sort of between that 450 and 500,000, but as a whole, most people who are looking to do that sort of thing down the line are probably spending $500,000 plus now.
Ian, just noticed on your website, Albion Street, Umina Beach, brick home on a 500 square metre block with rear lane access, but then you scroll down to the other end of the spectrum, and 101 Taylor Street in Woy Woy, this is offered by Jim Martin. What a spectacular looking home that is. In fact, it's listed as a waterfront masterpiece. Yeah,
you have to go on and check out the video for that one. They've got the drones flying over the bay, and it's pretty spectacular. So there's a pretty good cross-reference on the peninsula now. And you go back a few years, and it was pretty hard for anything to sell over the $1 million mark. But now it's pretty commonplace that those type of sales are occurring. But as you said, you're still getting those sales in the bottom end of the market, and that's why I think there's a lot of buyers that are attracted to this area, because there's just so many different options.
Gee, you're right about the drone. Looks absolutely sensational, Gav. We're watching it here in the studio now, and Jim looks like Don Johnson, circa Miami Vice.
Mate, I thought it was you. I thought it was you, Steve. But look, absolutely stunning footage with these drones. It's absolutely first class.
And
It's amazing and quite affordable as well.
And I'm just going to step back to this probably because when I walked in there, you handed me the reserve, and as the auctioneer, I just look at reserve, and that's my target. But it did seem potentially maybe a bit of a struggle. It was $520,000.
Yep.
The finishing point at auction was how much, Ian?
$605,000, so it was $85,000 above reserve.
Now, the people that did buy it were from Sydney. Now, I had assumed basically they were probably investors looking at doing something with it as far as a knockdown rebuild, but it appears that they're going to be occupiers of the home.
Yeah, I think they're going to do in the reverse to what we were talking about before. They're actually going to move into it and then possibly look to do something with it later down the line. But their main priority was just to actually buy the property. Amazingly, the person who ended up buying it hadn't actually stepped foot in the property prior to the auction day. He'd had some friends that had actually been through beforehand, but I hadn't actually met him until he came to register to bid on the day. So it's a bit of an example of what's happening at the moment.
Can I just sidetrack this just momentarily? Rod, you being an award-winning photographer, haven't drones revolutionised the way that you can view property and film it?
Look, and it depends on how you can do it. The beauty with a water one like that is you're not flying over somebody else's boundaries, are you? And so you can take the drone off the property, take it straight out over Woy Woy Bay, because you still need to be very, very cautious about not intruding over somebody else's residence, for instance.
Actually, I said that was Jim Martin. Was it Ben Crane up on the balcony in that video?
Yeah, so it's Ben and Jim with the listing. It's Ben who's actually up on the balcony there.
And it's a pure north-facing waterfront there on Taylor Street, isn't it?
That's right, and when you're talking about drones, I'm personally very big on video, having such a major influence on the way that we do things in the future. So that's where we're trying to incorporate that a lot more with our listings. And when you look at a property like that, as you said, with the bay and north aspect, there's only so much that you can do in your writing and your text, and even with respect to Rod with the photos as well. If you can have the video and especially a drone in that instance, I just think that adds a whole different dimension to be able to almost bring people to the property. So it's something that a couple of years ago wasn't really prevalent, and still a lot of people in our area don't use video, which I think is astounding, because it's definitely the way of the future.
Now, the bays are a fairly unusual little suburb area through there too. There's always a good level of interest in the Sydney market, with people buying either to relocate or still sometimes a weekend, a holiday property. But Taylor Street is really the dress circle. That's the one that runs around the point. It's waterfront on one side. But this particular one here is probably the most unique position you'll find in Taylor Street, isn't it, Ed?
Yeah, really good, and that's sort of, as you said, Taylor Street is definitely the dress circle of the bays, and it's sort of, you've got your different positions along Taylor Street, and up that end where that property is, that's basically known as the pinnacle of the street there. That's where most people want to be.
Well, Ian, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Great snapshot of what's happening on the peninsula. And, boy, you guys have got some fantastic properties there for offer. And congratulations, mate, on the website, the marketing that you guys are doing, and some of your recent results.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks a lot for the opportunity, guys.
Ian Willis joining us from Wilson's agency at Woy Woy. We're heading toward the north end of the coast, the beautiful north end with its pristine beaches, stunning waterways. Luke Thompson is based there with Ray White Thompson Partners. We'll catch up with him very shortly. It's the Our House Show, and we do it all thanks to Newcastle